So if you got a big arch in your back right here, known as lumbar lordosis, I assume you're watching this video because you want to figure out how to fix it. There may be a few reasons you want to do this, perhaps because you want to reduce your back pain, perhaps because you want to straighten up your posture to look better, or maybe you just want to look that 1 inch taller. I'm going to show you guys the techniques, the advanced techniques on how to improve this posture, so listen up. And of course, first things first, please subscribe to Ryleyrehab every single week, coming up with new content, helping you become the expert of your own body. And with that said, just to give a brief overview on how lumbar lordosis works, you basically have your spine that goes all the way up. And I'm just going to lift my shirt up here so you can see. In general, the spine should have a nice little curve here, especially in this part. But in some cases, it can be excessive. It can be really exaggerated, kind of like that. And in some cases, this can lead to more back pain and a few other problems. So assuming you have been cleared or been told by a professional that it is worth fixing, this is how you go about it. Historically, what people would always say is that you have tight muscles in the front of the hips, the hip flexors, and what that does is it basically pulls your hip bone down. You also have tight muscles in the back here that pull your back in that position, and you have weak glutes, weak bum muscles, and weak abdominal muscles, and all those together kind of lead to your pelvis being tilted forward. So therefore, the standard exercises to fix this is to first work on the flexibility of your hip flexors, which can be done by basically doing the lunge stretch, where you have one leg forward. I'll show you on this leg actually. You have one leg forward, and then you drive your hips forward, and then you tilt your pelvis back. One way you can tell if you're tilting the pelvis back is you should feel the top of your belt, the top or the front loop of your belt rather, come up like that. Should feel a good stretch all the way down the hip. And for best results, hold this for 60 seconds. Do it at least 3 times a day, but ideally 5 or 6 is even better. Second exercise you can do is to work on the abs, which often are weak when people have this. And all that involves is you doing crunches where you basically take your hands, slide them up to your knee. Don't go any further than that because you want to focus on your abs here. And then come back down, just like that. With this, I'd recommend starting with doing sets of 10, but if you feel like you can do up to 20, keep your hands behind your head, do the exact same thing, and this will be even harder. Third exercise that's really useful is working on those glutes right here to help tilt the pelvis down. You're going to do bum bridges, so you're going to go on both feet, lift your hips up like that, and go back down. While doing this, you want to make sure you're squeezing as much from the bum as possible and not just in the low back area. And for many people, this may be too easy. So what you can do instead is you can lift one leg forward, or just one leg off the ground. I'll show you with this leg off actually. And lift up your leg like that. So you can further strengthen those glutes to make them even more powerful. Now, I know a lot of you guys who've done the beginner stuff for this have probably came across a lot of videos and a lot of advice showing these kind of exercises, and they're a great place to start. But there is a next level to it, and that involves you working while you're standing. And this is especially true for those people who already feel like they have strong glutes, strong abs, and flexible hips. One example would be if you're one of those people where you pull your leg all the way up to your chest here, and your knee doesn't even come off the ground, you probably don't even have tight hips. So it's still useful, but it's not going to be the be-all, end-all solution to fixing your posture. Similarly, if you can come up on one leg and you can do this 30 plus times, you probably don't have weak glute muscles. And similarly with sit-ups, if you're doing 100 of these in a row, it's not necessarily going to be the problem. So the next step that I find really helpful is to actually work on the posture while you're standing and make this a regular routine. This is something you have to commit to for multiple months, often 3 to 6 months to notice a noticeable change. What you're going to do here is take a look at your belt line right here. In general, when you're looking in the mirror doing this, the target you want is to have your belt, assuming it's on nice and tight in the spot it usually is, you want your belt to be as horizontal as possible. tiny bit forward is okay, but in general, the more horizontal you go, the more it'll fix your posture from this to this right here. There's two ways to do this. One way is to squeeze the bum muscles, and then the other way is to squeeze the ab muscles, basically between the belly button and the bottom of where your hip bone is right there. I personally prefer to engage the abs, mainly because if you're squeezing the glutes, as soon as you start walking, you're gonna walk a little funny, you're gonna walk like you have a stick up your bum, and it just doesn't look as good, and it's not as sustainable. So what I want everyone to do here, I want you to imagine, put your hands roughly where the level of your belt would be. You can do this without wearing a belt, obviously, but just so you guys have a rough idea. And all you're gonna do, I'm gonna show you guys sideways here, is basically squeeze your hands here, just to imagine you're trying to shrink the skin, and then tilt the belt backwards until it's in that position. Ideally, you shouldn't feel any movement from the ribs upwards, and you shouldn't feel any movement down in the legs. It should purely be just from the hips, just right in this area right here. During the first week, I recommend you doing this in a mirror, holding this position as hard as you can, just to get yourself in that fixed posture. And take 10 deep breaths, and I would do 5 sets of these every single night for the first week, just to get familiar with what the correct posture is. Now, while this is an important nightly routine to get into, you also need to realize that you have to carry this over to your day-to-day life. There's no sense in just doing a million of these if you're not actually going to be applying it to your life in general. So the big rookie mistake a lot of people make with this, though, is that they'll think they just need to do this and hold that tucked back position all day, every day. And the truth is it's not sustainable at all. In fact, that's the equivalent to if you're trying to lose weight, to just stop eating entirely. It might feel good for a day or two, you may even see your weight drop, but it's not gonna last forever. You're immediately gonna bounce back, and you're not gonna be able to hold it forever, because really your muscles are gonna get tired, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, and just go back to square one. So what I recommend instead is throughout the day, as much as you can, I'd ideally do this every half hour to an hour, depending on, whenever you're standing, do it every half hour to an hour, is do that contraction, the same thing you were doing there, tilt your bum back there, and just hold it for 3 seconds. Count 1, 2, 3, and then slowly let go. To give you guys a better idea, you go 1, 2, 3, and then you let go while still maintaining a contraction. I want you to let go 3/4 of that, so you're only holding 1/4 of the power. So if this is all the way, I'm going to exaggerate a bit. This is all the way, you want to back off to about 25% of that. You should still feel a bit of a contraction, should still feel like those abs are kicking in, but it may not necessarily be a full correction. However, the more important part of this is it's sustainable. It's something you can do throughout the entire day, and as long as you regularly do that 3 seconds of pulling back there, just to remind yourself, you can spend ideally the entire day, or the entire day when you're standing, just having this posture where it's 25% contracted. Now, with that being your day-to-day routine, in general, your daily routine is going to be about the same. You're going to keep that 25% contraction all the time. But after the first week, you may just find it boring just to do these all day in front of the mirror. You may get used to the motion already. So what I recommend is on the second week, actually practicing walking. This can be around your house or outside, but I recommend you don't do this when you're around people so you can really focus on activating it. I want you to bring that posture into that position and maybe go about 50% on this. You may be able to fully correct, but I don't want it to be so bad that it throws your walking off. And all you're gonna do, I'm kind of low on room here, but you're just gonna walk around the way you normally would. And just try to hold that position for the whole 10 minutes while you're walking, in as much as you comfortably can. If it really feels like it's too much, don't overdo it. But in general, a good 50% contraction is usually enough, and it's all about retraining your brain here, just getting yourself used to having that new position. And over time, combined with having this as an everyday habit at 25%, this will really lead to the long-term changes that you're looking for. Now, 2 important disclaimers I do need to mention right off the bat. is number one, it isn't always something that you need to fix. It has been really played a lot by people that it causes back pain. And I would argue that in some cases it definitely does, but in some cases it doesn't. So I would ultimately go get yourself checked out by a healthcare provider who really knows what they're talking about in this area. Not just someone who's going to look at you for 2 seconds and say your posture is bad and say it needs to be fixed, but someone who actually has a rational reason for doing that correction. Because just like not everybody needs to have orthotics in their feet to realign their feet, not everybody needs to change their posture all the time. And also, there are some people who actually may be in more pain after doing this correction, similar to getting orthotics on their feet. So this is one of those things where you do often have to find a good reason to go ahead and do it. I would commit to this for a month or so and then see how it feels. If you do realize this is ever aggravating pain a little more and it's getting worse and worse over time, it's probably not worth it for you to do, or you may just need somebody to correct your form. In case you guys were wondering, I have a lordotic posture myself. I personally have found trying to correct it has actually been too much on an old groin injury I've had, so I've chosen to not overcorrect it there. I did actually go through this program myself, and I found it was a little too awkward for me to go through. But that said, I have helped many people in the process of fixing it, and I have seen many of them get good results. So it's all about just figuring out if it's right for you to change it. Additionally, though, you may be one of those people who is trying to change it for appearance, and if that's the case and you don't have any issues with pain, it's probably okay for you to go ahead with this too. The last point I want to make too is that don't expect it's going to necessarily bring your posture all the way back to normal. There is always a little bit of the body's natural structure that may only allow a certain amount of a change. So you may not be able to, similar to how not everybody is able to get to 8% body fat or 5% body fat, not everybody will necessarily be able to get to that perfect posture there. And it's not always necessary too. But I will say I have seen in many cases where people can correct that and even fix it by a few degrees to make themselves a little bit taller, maybe an inch or two taller, and have that back a little bit straighter. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you like it, please subscribe to Ryleyrehab. And I'm coming up with new content once again. I'm back. Please subscribe, please like and comment, and I will see you next time.